One of the key things here is that affordability is stretched. Pakenham is generally viewed as a safe area. This is the type of area where first home buyers would want to buy properties in. A lot of first home buyers would love to go into areas like this because they do have all the infrastructure in place. Do you want to know the areas where 600,000 properties could become 1 million within a few years? This is what everyone wants to buy. And so this is totally possible today. With the new first home buyer scheme announced, certain areas, certain first home buyer pockets are going to move up in value very fast. And as investors, you can buy into these areas so that you can get maximum returns on your investment. And that's exactly what I'm going to talk about in this video. Hi, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Jadhu Srikandan. I'm a buyer's agent for property investors, and I buy properties all around the country using a data-driven approach. So if you want to work with me, then go to my website, propertyframeworkbuyersagency.com.au, and book a session with me there. So today, I'm going to talk about what this first home buyer scheme is. Now, you already know that this was introduced on the 1st of October. And essentially, first home buyers can get into the market with just a 5% deposit, which means that areas which first home buyers like are going to move up in value fast. So today, I'm mainly looking at the state of Victoria. I've pretty much gone through the whole of Victoria, and I've shortlisted some suburbs in Victoria, which looks promising. This includes Melbourne as well. So to find these suburbs, you gotta think like a first home buyer. So what do first home buyers want? They want to buy into areas which are safe, which have good owner-occupier appeal. They have a good socio-economic profile, have good schools, they're well connected, and they have a bit of a hub. Like, you don't have to travel all the way to CBD for work. You have a bit of a hub where you find everything there. And the most important thing, with all of this in place, the area must be affordable. And that's the key thing there, right? The affordability becomes a key thing. So these are the potential areas that could move up in value. So as investors, we have to factor in all of this. And on top of that, we also want to make sure that there's not too much supply, there's not too much rental supply available, so that our investment property can do really well over the short and the long term. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to tell you the exact suburbs where I think there's potential for growth in the years ahead. So that's what this video is all about, and let's get into this. So I'm going to start with Melbourne. Where do I think there is going to be good value in Melbourne? So first, let's see where can we actually buy properties under 700,000. So you have the Melton region. Yes, you can buy properties under 700,000 here. You do have a lot of supply though around here. So you got to be careful with when you buy property for as an investment. You got to be careful with that because there's a surplus of rental properties here. So your rents have to be priced correctly for you to make the maximum out of your investment. You have areas around Hoppers Crossing, Werribee, this pocket as well, where it's still possible to get under 700,000. You do have this pocket here around this St. Albans, Deer Park, where you can still find 3x1s under 700,000. The north of Melbourne, you got areas like Roxburgh Park, Broadmeadows, where it's still 700,000 is still very much achievable. And then if you come to the southeast, then you got these pockets around here, Hampton Park, just around these areas where you have Doveton, Hampton Park, where it's still possible to find properties under 700,000. So there are still a few areas where this is possible, right? But what I'm seeing a lot is that when you buy into these areas like St. Albans, Deer Park, or even the north of Melbourne, like your Broadmeadows, one of the key things here is that affordability is stretched, right? You find older properties here, the affordability is stretched, and the socio scores or the ERSAT scores or the CIFA scores are very low here. You have a pretty lower socio-economic profile, and that's one of the things that I'll be slightly concerned about when I'm buying properties at 650,000, 700,000. So I would be looking at areas which have good CIFA scores or the ERSAT scores, which have good affordability and which have good owner-occupier demand. And out of all of this, one area is just standing out for me, and that's the suburb of Pakenham, which is just around here, the southeast of Melbourne. This area is becoming a really big first home buyer hotspot area. So the reason why I think Pakenham is good, let me just run through the data of Pakenham with you. So as you can see, median prices here 734,000, but prices you can still find 3x1s between that 650 to 700,000. If I look at the growth profile, you can see here 5 years 30%, 7 years, 36%. So again, an area that hasn't seen a lot of growth, which is good for us. Let's look at the social score. So 4. The ersatz score here is 4. There's hardly any suburb in Melbourne where you can find properties under 700,000 and have this good socio score. So that's a huge plus for Pakenham. You have only 31% renters, so it's dominated by own occupiers. The affordability score is pretty healthy. It's just around 35, 36 years. That's perfectly fine. And you see that market pressure is building up. Stock is reducing. Days on market is very tight, sitting at 25 days, which is very, very tight. Vacancy rates I can see here sitting at 3%. Over the last few months, it's just gone up slightly and it's sitting at 3%, but I'm not too concerned about this because I know while there are a lot of investors buying here, there's massive demand there from locals and homeowners. So I'm not too concerned about this slightly elevated vacancy rates because I know as long as I price the property correctly, I should be able to find a tenant, right? So why is Pakenham good? You know, it's got excellent, coming back to this maps here, it's got excellent connectivity. There were 2 new train stations which came up in 2024. It's a very relatively safe area. There are things that are going to come here like the community hospital. There are some new industrial estates that are going to be coming up here which will create jobs in the local market. And besides that, it's got really good connectivity to Melbourne. So the train stations there go directly into Melbourne. You can drive into Melbourne, so it's no problems at all there. And Pakenham is generally viewed as a safe area. And you can see by that ersatz score, it's a pretty affluent area as well, right? Somewhat affluent area as well. So this is the type of area where first-home buyers would want to buy properties in. And when you can buy properties like this, this is a property which recently sold 30th September 2025. It sold for 663,000. And if you could look at the inside, this is a low maintenance, really good property, right? So a first-home buyer would like to buy something like this, especially a young family would really like a property like this in an upcoming suburb like Pakenham. And that's the reason why I think the suburb of Pakenham is standing out in Melbourne. But that doesn't mean that that is the only suburb. I think it was just standing out, especially from that social score and the low crime rates, good own occupiers appeal score. But there are some other good areas, like in Melton, you do have areas like Harkness and Kurunjang. Just have to be very mindful of the vacancy rates here. And of course, from a socio-economic point of view, Pakenham is generally considered a better area than Melton, but Melton you would still see growth coming through in these areas as well. Another one that I would like to mention is Werribee, an area that's upcoming. Again, be mindful of the vacancy rates, but generally I would think of Werribee as a pretty decent investment as well. So if you ask me under 700, what is your best pick? I would go with Pakenham in Melbourne. And there are a few honorable mentions that I spoke about there as well, right? Now, that is Melbourne. I want to talk about other parts of Victoria where I see potential. The next area I see potential is in Geelong. So I've shortlisted a few suburbs in Geelong. So these are all areas where you have newer properties coming in. Armstrong Creek, Curlewis, Grovedale, Lara, Leopold. It's still possible to find 500 plus properties under 700,000 with about a 500 plus meter square block of land. And you can see here the ersatz scores, the socio-economic scores are excellent. Armstrong's Creek, it's 8, Curlewis 6, 5, 6, 5. This is very high. And you can't just have properties sitting at 600, 700,000 with these type of scores for too long, right? Especially in a rising market. So this means that these areas are going to hit that 1 million pretty fast over that next few years. So there's massive potential. And if you look at the affordability, they're all under 30 years, which means they're very affordable to the locals. We do have a slightly higher elevated building approvals in areas like Armstrong Creek, for example. I'm not too concerned about that. Looking at how construction costs and the time it takes to build a house, I don't expect this to create an oversupply in that area. I still think there's a lot of demand, especially migration from Melbourne, which is happening into Geelong. A lot of first-home buyers would love to go into areas like this because they do have all the infrastructure in place. They're newer properties with all the amenities in place. In comparison to areas like Corio and Nolane, for example, or Whittington, where you can buy properties, I guess now if you're going to buy something in Corio, Nolane or Whittington, you're looking at something around that closer to 600,000. Those are a bit of a lower socio areas. The ersatz scores are low. The affordability isn't looking great. So would you buy that at 600,000, or would you go up to 650 to 700,000 and buy into these areas where the ersatz scores are much better, the affordability is much better, and you get much better properties as well. So you look at this property here in Curlewis, right? This one just sold at 670,000, 3 bedroom, 2 bathroom, 644 meter square block of land. Look at this house. So it's an absolute new property, something that a first home buyer, own occupiers would love a house like this, right? So low maintenance yard, excellent house, and very affordable, 670,000. Well, affordable in the context of Greater Geelong. When you look at properties in Geelong and Melbourne, then 670,000 is still quite affordable, and it's also reflected by the affordability scores there. The locals find these properties really affordable. So these are the areas that I would look at in Geelong. Now, this is not me being against lower socio areas or areas with lower ersatz scores. That's not what I'm trying to get at here. What I'm trying to get at here is that when you're starting to buy properties in that 650, 700,000, when you're starting to move up and you're no longer looking at that under 500,000, you would naturally want to buy into areas that have that potential, have good affordability, have better affluence, so that they can function as a better investment over the long term. That's exactly what I'm getting at here, right? So instead of buying something at 600,000 in a lower socio area, why not going into a much better area and buy something between 650 and 700,000? That's the point that I'm trying to drive at here. So yes, there are some really strong suburbs in Geelong, and finally I want to get into Ballarat. Ballarat has plenty of suburbs as well. Now you got Alfredton, Ballarat North, Brownhill, Lucas, Miners Rest. Look at these ersatz scores here, like 7.577, 6.57. So really healthy scores. Past 5-year growth, similar to Geelong, it hasn't had a lot of growth. Affordability again looks excellent. Like everything is under 30 years, so it's very, very affordable. And this is the recipe for a price boom. Really good ersatz scored, really healthy affordability, and a rising market, right? If you have all three of them together, that means the area that area is going to experience a significant level of growth, right? Now, if you look at the vacancy rates here, which I've shortlisted again here, you're looking at under 2% vacancy rates for all these suburbs. So really tight suburbs, not a lot of housing supply coming in there as well. The only downside that I see with Ballarat is that the rental yields are very low. Shockingly low. Like if you buy something for 680,000, it might only rent out for 450, 460 per week. So you'll have to put up with these lower rental yields if you're buying something in Ballarat. But be assured that this market is dominated by locals who want to buy properties. So your property, despite being negatively geared, would definitely move up in value, right? You'll see that capital growth coming through. So let me share an example for you, which is in Ballarat. So this is 142 Cuthbert Road in Alfredton. I think Alfredton is probably the best area that you can buy in Ballarat, where if you can find something under 700,000 in Alfredton, a house like this, then you're doing pretty well. Look at this house. So massive house, very nicely renovated, 636,000. Probably would rent out for maybe, I would say, 480 per week or even just 500 per week. So definitely lower rents. But these houses aren't going to be sitting around at 636,000 for too long. Over the years, we're not going to see explosive growth, but over the years, they'll slowly and steadily be moving up towards that 1 million mark. That's what's going to happen in suburbs like Alfredton. So I guess I've covered the main areas in Melbourne. These are the actual hot areas in Melbourne. So I've gone through the entire Victoria, looked at all suburbs there, and these were the suburbs that were standing out to me. So you've got Pakenham in Melbourne, and then you got some suburbs in Geelong, and then you also have suburbs in Ballarat. So I've purposely kept it under 700,000 so that affordability can be factored in as well. And so if you're someone who's buying a property for between that 600 to 700,000, then I would think that these areas are very promising, right? You can buy good quality properties and you will see good returns on your investment in the short term and over the long term as well. So that's it from me. I hope again you found this video useful. Please, if you have any comments, then put it. Put it in the comment section below and I'll get back to you. I hope you found this video useful. I'll see you back in my next video.